Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Qul huwallahu ahad, Allahu samad, lam yalid wa lam yulad, wa lam yakul lahu kufuwan ahad. Sadaqallahu al-Azim. Distinguished speakers, Chairman Board of Governor, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, fellow colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, Assalamu alaikum and a very good morning. I am Dr. Saif Malik, Director, India Studies Center, Strategic Studies, Islamabad. On behalf of Ambassador Khalid Mahmood, Chairman Board of Governors, and Ambassador Aizaz Ahmed Chaudhry, Director General ISSI. India's aggressions towards its neighbors, a threat to regional stability, enormously significant in view of the changing strategic imperatives in South Asia. Since its independence from the colonial rule, India has continuously been exerting its energies in extending its neighbor, starting from the illegal annexation of Kashmir to the border, from frontier issues with Bangladesh to the heinous motives of moving troops in Sri Lanka in the guise of peacekeeping force, to the covert designs of impinging Bhutan defense and foreign policy, and last but not the least is the biggest folly of indulging itself in the recent misadventure in Ladakh, thus entering into a conflict with China, reflect trajectories of Indian aggressive designs towards its neighbors. The relentless pursuit to establish dominance on its neighbor is also a manifestation of the Hindutva ideology that the Indian leadership has adopted. With no rationale involved, Indian actions are nothing but warmongering and flexing of inflated muscles. These dreadful actions of Indian callous intentions are gradually pushing the region towards instability. Aforementioned in view, some serious questions merit attention. One, what is the nature of security dilemma in South Asia? Two, what is the ultimate objective vis-a-vis outcome of the Indian hegemonic design? Three, how to halt Indian aggressive posture in quest of peace in South Asia? Four, how Indian ingress in Ladakh impact on the regional stability? Five, how to make India realize that eventually dialogue is the key to resolve disputes. Questions. India Studies Center at the Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad, has organized Indian mindset beside determining to what extent the Indian actions are not only reckless but also obvious challenge and threat to regional peace and stability. The webinar also aims to chalk out a course of action for Pakistan geopolitical development. Today's so that scholars and students could equally benefit. Therefore, I urge the viewers to subscribe our YouTube channel for scholars events and the many more lineup in due course. With this premise, Ahmed Chaudhry, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, for the welcome introduction. Ambassador as a member of the Foreign Service of Pakistan for 37 years. His last assignment Pakistan to United States of America. Earlier, he served as Foreign Secretary of Pakistan. He also served as Ambassador of Pakistan to Netherlands. Ambassador Chaudhry holds a Master's in International Relations. He also authored a book, Pakistan Mirror. May I request Ambassador Aizaz? Sir,
Thank you. Thank you, Seth. A very warm welcome to all of you. The reason why I thought of doing this particular subject was because when the tensions started going up on the line of actual control, and we delved into it as an that while it may appear to Chinese aggressions, but it actually so happens that it was in such a manner that it was actually their aggressions. And we will talk about it later. And then we thought that it would be important to take a bigger picture of what India is doing to all its neighbors. Because only then we will get a of what exactly is India up to, what kind of security dilemma it faces, and what kind of security dilemma it poses to South Asia. And that is why we have this assembly of illustrious minds on this webinar who will wisen us on various dimensions of India's relations with its neighbors and how they are aggressing against them and creating a South Asia which is facing serious threats of peace and stability. Ambassador Riaz Khokar will, of course, is the most suited person to talk about the recent challenges that India has posed for Pakistan. Ambassador Salman will, nobody is better than him to talk about India's relations with China and the current standoff. Ambassador Zamir has served as our ambassador to Nepal, so I know that he has a strong grip on that. And Ambassador Shahid Hashmat, General Shahid Hashmat, we were together in New York for High Commissioner for Sri Lanka. So he'll talk about the choices that Sri Lanka has. And then we have three academics with us. Dr. Munis Ahmed, he has some personal experience about the Bangladeshi politics, so he would probably share with us what India is doing to Bangladesh, although under Sheikh Hasina it's a different, there is a strong sentiment otherwise. Then we have Dr. Asma Khaja, who will be speaking about the ideological base that is guiding Modi's regime, the Hindutva philosophy, and then Dr. Jaspal, who will talk about the false flag operations, a term which has been given a whole new meaning by the Indian thinkers and practitioners. So I would and let me also say that Ambassador Khalid Mahmood will conclude the proceedings. He has been an enormous support, and we're very happy session that these warm words of welcome to everyone.
Thank you, sir. Prior to further proceedings, may I humbly request to the worthy speaker to please time due to the time constraint. So while inviting our first speaker, Ambassador Riaz Khokar, let me introduce him. Few Pakistani diplomats have worked on as many important assignments as Ambassador Khokar has. He has been Pakistan's envoy to Dhaka, New Delhi, Washington, D.C., and Beijing before becoming Foreign Secretary in 2002. He has served a long diplomatic stint in India for 10 years in different positions, including High Commissioner. Ambassador Riaz Khokar will enlighten us on recent challenges in Pakistan-India relations. Sir, floor is with you.
Thank you very much, Azaz Chaudhry, for your invitation, and Khalid Mahmood for gracing the occasion. And I also warmly welcome to my fellow panelists, or all of them are friends. before we get on to the real subject, let me first clarify one or two things. What are India's strategic objectives? First of all, Akhand Bharat is a lot of strategic nonsense. There is no question ever achieving their sort of the of the of the current regime. I don't think anybody in the they could achieve Akhand Bharat, but Indian strategic aims. Hegemony in South Asia, definitely. Domination of Eastern and Western Indian Ocean. Keeping all the South Asian countries under control. And of course, in this whole objective, their principal, shall we say, impediment is Pakistan, and of course China in a certain way. As far as China is concerned, the Indians are damn scared of the Chinese. That's a fact. And I think not only the 1962 events, now I think the Chinese have given them a small nosebleed, but they can look forward to much more. As far as Pakistan is concerned, yes, India has always been a major threat for Pakistan. In fact, the only real threat to Pakistan. And since the last, shall we say, few months, since August 19, it has become a very perilous threat for Pakistan. Violations of, huge violations of human rights in Kashmir, the lockdown, the genocide, and letting loose 1 million troops on the unarmed Kashmiris. These are all very serious matters. India thinks that this is a final solution. I think they have grossly miscalculated. And clearly, so much depends on the Kashmiris. And they are very bravely facing all the pain and making huge sacrifices. I think Indian strategy at the moment is, of course, they want to divert attention because they also know that the international community is very much indifferent to what's happening in South Asia. And of course, the UN is sadly not all that effective. So India thinks that it's got things under its belt, but maybe this is a miscalculation. Their approach, their strategy at the moment is to keep the pressure on the LOC and to try and tempt, or shall we say, stalk Pakistan into escalating the situation, so that they get a chance to tell the international community, look, we were reasonable, we were only fighting terrorism, but Pakistan has gone ahead and has done this. So the point I'm trying to make is we have to be careful. We don't have to be afraid of the Indians. In fact, the message should be very clear to the Indians. You cross the line in Jammu and Kashmir, you cross the line in Gilgit-Baltistan, you will get it straight and narrow and right on your nose. So I think this message has to get through to the Indians. As far as diplomatic effort is concerned, there's no room for diplomacy with the Indians at the moment. Today, the Indians have very contemptuously rejected Prime Minister's offer of cooperating on COVID-19. I don't know why we made this offer. I don't know what we got out of it. Snubs. I think we should watch. We should be very careful when it's dealing with India. India doesn't believe in gestures. They only believe in shall we say, imposing what they think is the right thing. So hubris, arrogance, this is part of their nature. Aggression is part of their nature. Violence is part of their nature. So we should remember all these things. And I finally want to make the point that we should be cool. We should exude confidence. And more important, if for all this and to face India, we need to put our house in order. That, I'm afraid, is one of our weak spots. And we should be very, very clear that this is not a party issue. This is a national issue. And therefore, everybody should be on board. All the institutions should be on board. The threat from India is serious. It's not to be discounted. And finally, the point I need to underline is that India is now a strategic partner of the United States. How much of a threat is that to Pakistan? We have to be very careful. Indian objectives, we know. Of course, they want to dominate South Asia. They want to dominate the Indian Ocean region. And also, they want to undermine. This is a common objective of the United States and India. Undermine CPEC. And they think India is actually trying to play this up, that CPEC is a strategic threat not only to India that they can deal with, but it is also a threat to the West. So I think we need to look at all these things very carefully. But main thing is to exude confidence and to give a very clear message to the Indians that if they go out of step, they will get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Khokhar, for very thought-provoking ideas. Our next speaker is Ambassador Salman Bashir. Ambassador Salman Bashir served as a distinguished diplomat. His foreign diplomatic assignments included Pakistan mission to the United Nations Office at Geneva, Organization of the Islamic Conference, Secretariat Jeddah, Ambassador of Pakistan to Denmark. He has also served as the Foreign Secretary. Ambassador Bashir also served as High Commissioner of Pakistan to India. The ambassador will express his views on the theme India-China standoff. What is at stake? Sir.
Thank you, Saif Saab. Thank you very much, Azaz and Khalid Mahmood Saab, for inviting me to be among this illustrious panel, which is dealing with the subject of Indian aggressive behavior. I think for both Pakistan, especially so for Pakistan and for China, and I'm sure the Chinese are very mindful of it because they have very good perceptive grip on everyone, and especially so on the Indians. The first thing is, and I entirely, totally agree with Ambassador Riaz Khokhar. He has spelt it very clearly, and he has, in fact, sort of indicated what we ought to do. To my mind, the symptoms of Indian behavior need to be probed a bit deeply. It is important to understand the mindset of the RSS-led BJP government in India. I believe that the only claim to fame of this regime is that it has been feeding the Indian populace a healthy dose about myths from prehistoric times about Hindu superiority, thereby and trying to instill a self-worth in a downtrodden, class-ridden society. I think the Chinese understand this very clearly. As far as the situation on the LAC is concerned, I believe that China has run out of patience. They have been obliged to take defensive actions and made certain moves in view of grave Indian provocations. And these provocations range across a broad spectrum. To my mind, it has the following components. One is juridical. The step that they took on the 5th of August last year to alter the legal status of Jammu and Kashmir, which includes Ladakh and incorporating Ladakh as a union territory, was objected to by the Chinese. So one is the juridical component. This is serious. The second is political, which encompasses a number of things, including cartographic aggression, claims to Aksai Chin, as were recently made by Amit Shah, their continued hostility towards CPEC, and statements by the Indians on their nefarious designs against Gilgit-Baltistan. Chinese could not have remained indifferent to all this. Then on the military side, the Indians have tried to change the status quo along the LAC, not only reinforcing their military positions in that area, but also by building infrastructure, the airstrips, and preparing for a mountain warfare against China. And then also, I think the other component is, which is relevant and which would have taken note by the Chinese, is strategic, that is the global power play. India, of course, as you all know, has lent itself to the US campaign against China in a very, very active manner. So all of this, but I think essentially also the overall global US-China picture is relevant to understanding the full implications of the reasons for the Chinese to having taken pragmatic steps along the LOC. And as we know, the Chinese, they have immense patience. They have tried for several years to reach some sort of an accommodation with India. But I think they have run out of patience now, and they are inclined to take pragmatic steps and not just speak and wail, and they don't believe in rhetoric but action. So I think although the lip service to the Wuhan consensus will continue, given the fact that the Indians have been, according to Indian commentators, they have in fact meekly surrendered to the Chinese in the present situation. But and although India may talk about the Wuhan consensus or try to revive it, but the Chinese will read actions, not words. So what are the implications of the LAC for Pakistan? I think one thing which has been highlighted by this is the four-way dimensions of the Jammu and Kashmir issue. There are four parties to the J&K. It is not only the Kashmiris, it is Pakistan, India, and China. And I think this fact ought not to be missed out, because usually our position in the J&K is the rights of the people, but now the territorial aspects need to figure much more prominently. And I think it is important that the policy framers in Pakistan take this into account. It has also brought to the fore the Indian designs against Gilgit-Baltistan and the Azad Jammu and Kashmir. Now, what should Pakistan do in view of this situation, and it's likely to aggravate? First, I think we need to deepen our consultations with our Chinese friends. There is the need for deep consultations and close coordination between Pakistan and China, which should also include 24/7 outlines of consultation mechanisms, not only political but also between the military. Two, I think Pakistan needs to take the Indian threat seriously and take appropriate steps on the ground to preempt Indian aggression against Gilgit-Baltistan. 3, I think time has come for us to draw and announce our red lines and ask for a vacation of Sachin Glacier by the Indians. 4, I think the defense of the CPEC route is critical for both China and Pakistan, and it ought to be a joint responsibility.
Please wind up, sir.
And there are steps that need to be taken in this regard. So, need to make it clear that Gilgit-Baltistan will warrant a full response. 6, I think we should see how we can work with the Chinese to declare the northern areas and Xinjiang as an economic integrated geographic zone, and that should lead to the development of the GB and AJK. And finally, we ought to prepare for the long haul in terms of the new Cold War between US and China on the basis of safeguarding our interests. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for highlighting very crucial aspects of the subject matter. Now I request Dr. Munis Ahmed for his remarks on Indian Citizenship Amendment Act implications for Bangladesh-India relation. Dr. Munis Ahmed was a meritorious professor, Department of International Relations, University of Karachi. He is a former Dean, Faculty of Social Sciences, and Director, Program on Peace Studies and Conflict Resolutions. His field of specialization is conflict and security studies, focusing on the South and Central Asian region. He has also been on fellowship in Dhaka University. Dr. Ahmed is author of book, Pakistan and Bangladesh, From Conflict to Cooperation. Sir, floor is with you.
Thank you very much. And I must compliment ISSI for hosting this meeting, such an important topic. The implications of Indian Citizenship Amendment Act on Indo-Bangladesh relations. We have to look at this topic from 2 angles. The first is that how the INC, that is Indian Naturalization Citizenship thing, that act was promulgated in 2014, and that act basically led to some sort of an insecurity among the Bangladeshis in India, that they were those who were living illegally. To the extent that in 2014, the Supreme Court of India advised the Indian government to negotiate with Bangladesh about the fate of illegal, so-called illegal Bangladeshi immigrants in India. Sheikh Hasina, who last visited, the Prime Minister of Bangladesh, who last visited India in November 2019, she ruled out any rupture in Indo-Bangladesh relations on NRC, that is National Registration of Citizenships, or the naturalization thing. But then things changed in December 2019 when CAA, Citizenship Amendment Act, was promulgated. And that act basically led to some sort of a dent in Indo-Bangladesh relations, to the extent that the Bangladeshi government cancelled the visit of its home minister, its foreign minister, and also postponed 2 meetings with India in New Delhi on the management of river water resources. Then there's another aspect, there's another angle as far as the CAA thing is concerned, that in December, January, February, and March, these 3-4 months, there were many demonstrations in Bangladesh, and these demonstrations were basically launched by those who were against the Citizenship Amendment Act. We have to understand that in Bangladesh, at the time of partition of the Indian subcontinent, in the then East Pakistan, there were around 18 to 20% Hindu minorities. Now their number has declined to around 10%. So the argument was basically that India was using the Hindu minority in Bangladesh, and for that purpose, there were demonstrations in Dhaka when Narendra Modi, the Indian Prime Minister, was scheduled to visit Bangladesh, to visit Dhaka on March 18, on the occasion of the birth and the centenary of the founder of Bangladesh, Sheikh Mujibur Rahman. The demonstrators, they threatened the Bangladesh government that they will not allow the Indian Prime Minister to land in Dhaka. The visit was postponed under the pretext of pandemic. So what I would like to maintain here is that at the elite level, at the governmental level, till the time there is the regime of Sheikh Hasina in Bangladesh, I don't see any qualitative, some sort of a negative transformation of Indo-Bangladesh relations. To the extent that Bangladesh is an ally of India, we have to understand that the Indian government tried to pacify those who were against CAA and were against the NRC, that these two were basically the Indian domestic matters, will not affect Bangladesh. But Bangladesh knows very well, the people of Bangladesh, they are understandable to the fact that in Assam, when in the time of 1971, millions of Muslim Bengalis and others who went to Assam, and then the Indian Home Minister Amit Shah, he is a hawk as far as the Indian-Bangladesh relations concerned, and he has threatened to deport millions of Bangladeshis from India to Bangladesh. This is what is resented in Bangladesh. What I basically, finally, I would like to mention here that despite at the popular level, we can see a lot of resentment what India is up to in Bangladesh, that Bangladeshi dependence on India. And the fact that India signed a deal with Bangladesh of $500 billion credit given to the military for military cooperation between India and Bangladesh. So at the elite level, there is no problem because those who are in power since 2009, when Awami League came into government, they realized very well that they have to mend fences with Bangladesh, with India. And for that matter, there has been the maritime boundary agreement. There has been the river, water sharing agreement. There's an agreement on the exchange of enclaves. But nevertheless, at the popular level, there is a perception that what India's the Citizenship Amendment Act, and also as far as the national Registration of Citizens Act, these two acts are primarily Bangladesh specific. And people like Amit Shah, and Amit Shah basically holds enormous clout as far as the Indian BJP establishment is concerned, as the state establishment is concerned, that Amit Shah on the one hand, and there's also soft image of on the part of India, that is when Jay Shankar, who is the Indian External Affairs Minister, he is the one who was the High Commissioner of India in Dhaka, and he basically has a lot of goodwill. So he tried to pacify issues between India and Bangladesh. So right now there is a stalemate. And then finally, I would like to that there are millions of illegal Bangladeshi immigrants in India, and they are baggage, and they must be thrown out. The counter narrative is basically that there are 500,000 Indian nationals who are living in Bangladesh, and they are sending around $5 billion of remittances to India. That the Bangladeshi economy, which was growing till the time there was the pandemic, 7.5%. So they argue that India cannot take Bangladesh for granted, that Bangladesh is not what it was in the 70s, or the 80s, or the 90s. It's a success story, and its economy has basically strengthened. It has grown more than the size of more than the rate of the Indian economy. So therefore, I would like to conclude here that despite there is, as far as the Bangladeshi regime is concerned, of Awami League and the elites of Bangladesh, that there is no problem, absolutely. But as far as the Bangladesh nationalist party is concerned, there is one party which has reservations in Bangladeshi relations with India. At the popular level, there is a big issue and the perception that Bangladesh must protect its sovereignty. Bangladesh must not allow India to encroach, must not allow India to interfere in the internal issues of Bangladesh. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Munez, for a very impressive contribution on this subject matter. Our next speaker is again a seasoned diplomat, Ambassador Zamir Akram. Ambassador Zamir Akram has served as the Pakistan ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador Akram held various diplomatic assignments abroad, including in Moscow, Geneva, New Delhi, and Washington, and served as a Pakistan's ambassador to Nepal. Presently, Ambassador Akram is advisor Strategic Plans Division. The ambassador is going to dilate on theme India-Nepal tension. Sir, floor is with you.
Thank you very much. I want to begin by thanking the Institute for inviting me to this very important seminar. To come straight to the issue, the Nepal-India tensions currently are between India and China. And these tensions reflect India's aggressive policies towards its neighbors. We've heard about China, we already know about Indian policies towards Pakistan. But lately, a country as small as Nepal, something which was a country that was considered to be close to the Indians, has also risen up in opposition to what the Indians are trying to do on the ground by undermining Nepalese sovereignty. The issue particularly is relating to a construction of a road linking the Indian land, the Indians' territory to the tri-junction with this border dispute. The Kalapani area, which is around about 400 square kilometers, lies to the west of Nepal, and it is at the tri-junction of India, Nepal, and China. There is another territorial dispute to the south of Nepal in the area called Susta, which is about 140 kilometers. The origins of this dispute are, of course, the Suguli Treaty that was signed by the Kingdom of Nepal and the British Indian government in 1816, according to which the areas west of the Kali River were considered to be part of Nepal. But in 1962, during the Indo-China War, the Indians occupied this territory and have since been holding on to this and claiming that the border is not west of the Kali River as was agreed in the treaty with the British, but along the ridge line of the Om Parvat mountains, which is to the east of the river. So, as I said, an area of almost 400 square kilometers has been occupied by the Indians. And as I mentioned, this has now become a major issue because of the construction of the road that the Indians are building up to the Lipule Pass. But the underlying issue, of course, is Indian hegemony towards its neighbors, particularly its smaller neighbors. Way back in 1950, the Indians and the Nepalese signed the Treaty of Friendship, according to which Nepal ceded to has created a great deal of animosity and anger amongst the Nepali people. And when I served there, I experienced it at first hand when the king of Nepal, the then king of Nepal, to whom I presented my credentials, King Ganendra, called Nepal India locked and called India a big country with a small heart. This kind of sentiment was also repeated by a number of Nepali officials and normal everyday civilians. The Indians have blockaded Nepal several times in the 1980s, then again in 2015, most recently, reducing the flow of vital commodities, particularly oil, creating great hardships for Nepal. But fortunately for Nepal, after around about the turn of the 21st century, around 2000, the Chinese became more active in Nepal, and this has provided a fallback option or a secondary option for the Nepalese. And the Chinese have built a almost 800-kilometer highway that links Lhasa, the Tibetan capital, to Kathmandu. This has enabled China to engage in trade as well as providing Nepal an outlet from being India locked. The strategic importance for Nepal, of course, exists for not only the Indians, but also for the Chinese, and more so for the United States as well. Nepal has been used by the United States to ingress into Chinese Tibet. They have emigres that have been encouraged from Chinese Tibet to live in Nepal and are used for Pakistan. Of course, Nepal has not enjoyed the same kind of strategic importance as I personally think it deserves. In this context, I just want to recall something that was said by Mr. Bhutto when he was foreign minister, that Nepal for Nepal exists even today, and as the concerns and as the tensions between India and China begin to grow and India and Nepal begin to grow, Pakistan needs to reevaluate its position vis-a-vis China and work with, because China can provide Pakistan access to Nepal through its northern areas, through the Xinjiang region, because that is the route that the Chinese are themselves using. It will prevent territory. So I think Pakistan needs to reevaluate the situation in the light of the current developments, particularly as Indians can pursue their aggressive designs with their neighbors, and that includes Pakistan, China, and Nepal. And I think that this is something that our decision makers need to look at very carefully. And it is also an area where it calls for greater cooperation between Pakistan and China, as well as between Pakistan and Nepal. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for sharing highly invaluable views on the matter, her thoughts on Hindutva and Modi's regional policy. Dr. Asma Shakir Khaja authored Shaking Hands with Clenched Fists, focusing Pakistan, India Khaja, National Defense University, Islamabad. Dr. Khaja, floor is with you.
Thank you so much. First, I would like to appreciate ISS and Indian Study Center for organizing interactive session on such an important issue. The topic given to me is Hindutva and the regional stability. So first of all, like the behavior of a state is defined through the identities and interests structured by norms, values, rules, and institutions within that state. And here, Hindutva is the foundation of the norms, values, rules, and institutions of Indian state. Moreover, Hindutva is a parochial approach, and that is been manifested whenever India deals with any country or within the region. Hindutva constructs exclusive society through religious, political, social polarization, and that is why it symbolizes Indian colonialism. So Indian colonialism is also a reality. For manipulative purposes to undermine the sovereignty and integrity of the regional states. And here, and this is the point where Hindutva is a destabilizing factor for the regional states when they are always under threat to exercise their sovereignty and integrity. As my worthy colleagues and seniors, they have highlighted, so I will not repeat it. And because the India-Nepal border dispute, India-China line of actual control dispute, water disputes with Bangladeshi, sending back Bangladeshi Muslim immigrant workers from Indian provinces like Indian states like Assam and other, that these are the examples which supports this argument that Hindutva is employing ideology, capital politics, real politics, and geopolitics to further their interests. Hindutva manifests Hindu superiority, which is generally been known as Akhand Bharat. And this is why India is unable to respect the sovereignty and integrity of the regional state. While manifesting such ideology of Akhand Bharat or Hindu supremacy, which we also known as, it is also known as white supremacy, because when we say Hindutva, it only includes Brahmins, not the lower castes, Hindu castes. So while manifesting such ideology, Modi during his visit to Bangladesh applauded the role of Hindu youth and Indian government in creation of Bangladesh, and this is another example that how for ages India is trying to manifest the or to inculcate instability in the region. This superiority reflects in India's dealing with regional states, and as India is the only South Asian state which expanding since day one at the cost of the territorial integrity of the regional states. So this is an important thing. And arms race in the region is also triggered by the illusion of Hindu supremacy in Indian mindset. As a result, most of the economic resources of the regions are being consumed in non-developmental projects, and India is leading this. Hindutva encourages policy of power centralization, and this is really important. The policy manifests in Indian politics to make SAARC ineffective and dysfunctional. We all know that SAARC is most ineffective regional organization in the world, especially when in post-Cold War order, international system was tilted or working on regionalism because it's regions which grow. And here, India has intentionally made SAARC ineffective and dysfunctional so that India remains the hegemonic. And the reason behind this strategy is to sustain India as the only hegemonic power in the region, because in an effective, workable regional organization, all small states of South Asia would have equal weightage or an equal right to manifest or express how they want to see the future of this region. So that is why in order to stop or limit the equal status of regional states, India doesn't allow SAARC to work effectively. And this becomes more obvious when all over the world, regions are fighting against COVID-19. It is not the independent states, but India again used COVID-19 to further polarize the region and create walls between on the basis of ethnicity and religion between the regional states. Thanks to Hindutva
Conclude.
and India, that South Asia has the lowest connectivity in the world, because India is situated at the center of South Asia, so it doesn't allow. And I'm really glad, as Ambassador Zamir Akram said, that maybe with the help of China, Pakistan would Hindutva has created the perception of peace as a zero-sum game, endangering regional probabilities of for domestic consumption as the result of endangering regional stability. So Modi, whatever this Hindutva is doing, that is anti-Muslim, how they are dividing region on the basis of religion, caste, and ethnicity. So regional connectivity, development, economic uplift, and are not possible when the biggest regional country manifests no political will and political capital for peaceful coexistence among the regional states. Rather focuses on building walls on the basis of caste, religion, ethnicity, and class to satisfy its conflict-based myopic worldview. India's aggressive posture towards the regional states is a big
Dr. Asma
question. Yeah, the regional state is a big question mark on the safety and credibility of Indian nuclear command and control as well, especially when Hindu radicals and torchbearer of Hindutva are in power and have access to nuclear push button, while considering their nuclear program as cornerstone for the power-centric Hindutva ideology. And this is not only a threat for regional peace and stability, but for international status quo as well. I thank you all for your patience and your giving me the time to share my views. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Khaja, for scholastic insight. Our next speaker is endowed with unique credentials. Dr. Shahid Hashmat is retired Major General of Pakistan Army and a former High Commissioner of Pakistan to Sri Lanka. He holds a postdoctorate in international relations. He has served as Dean at NAST Institute of Peace and Conflict Studies and as advisor at National Defense University. Besides serving as contingent commander of a UN peacekeeping mission, he has also served at the UN Secretariat in the Department of Peacekeeping Operations. Dr. Hashmat will focus on India-Sri Lanka relations, the BRI factor. Sir, floor is with you.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Assalamu alaikum. First of all, I would like to extend my thanks to Dr. Saif, to the Institute of Studies, and to Ambassador Azaz, with whom I had the pleasure and honor to serve together at the New York when I was serving with the UN. As regards India's aggressive attitude, before coming on to Sri Lanka, I would like to make a point which has been said by all worthy speakers, that India's attitude, the belligerent attitude and the offensive attitude and aggressive attitude, is not only toward one particular country, or Pakistan, or Nepal, or any other, say, regional countries. It is in fact towards the complete South Asia. The attitude towards Pakistan, towards Sri Lanka, to Maldives, to Nepal, to Bhutan, and to Bangladesh, with little varied nature of disputes which India has, but in general, India adopts a very aggressive and very offensive attitude, because India considers itself and tries to behave like a hegemon in the region.
Uh, as it has been said by Dr. Asma Khaja as well, uh, I have experienced it myself during my stay at Colombo. Peaceful resolution of any conflict, especially through SARC, because India's non-cooperative attitude and the India not only works against the SARC, it forces other countries as well to not to participate in any effort which is initiated by the SARC, and uh, the refusal of different countries to participate in the SARC summit is case in point. As regards India's attitude towards Sri Lanka, uh, I would like to briefly say that India look a little hard expression, but this is what is the reality. In 1987, during the middle of the civil war in Sri Lanka, India actually invaded Sri Lanka on the pretext of sending a peacekeeping force which was not authorized by the UN, not authorized by any of the regional body, and India has also threatened Maldives. To an extent, there has been a partial military intervention as well, but in the last elections and prior to that, India had been threatening Maldives with military intervention. Uh, Coming on to Sri Lanka, after the military intervention, when Indian forces were being withdrawn, India forced Sri Lanka to change its constitution. An amendment was made, which is very commonly known as 13th Amendment, which created 9 provinces. Sri Lanka is a very small country. In fact, it doesn't need this is a unit. It is essentially a unitary governance they need. But at the most they need they accept 2 to 3 provinces at all. They created 9 provinces, and till today they are pursuing their interference in the northern province, which is occupied mostly by the Tamils, Jaffna, and they continue pressurizing the Sri Lankan government to join northern and eastern province. And that is, in fact, a continuation of their policy of dividing Sri Lanka into 2 countries, which they could not do militarily and which they could not do through Tamil terrorist activities. Now they want to do it through the political means. Most Chinese developmental projects, especially the Hambantota and few other projects, India has been pressurizing Sri Lanka to get some concessions regarding the Colombo port contract, regarding the airport in Jaffna, and the very important seaport at Trincomalee. This is basically to counterbalance the Hambantota port project, which is undertaken by China as part of the CPEC. The merger of the northern and the eastern province, which I have already mentioned, that is very actively and aggressively pursued and supported by India. And essentially it is aimed at dividing the country into 2 halves. Simultaneously, it goes against the interest of the Muslim community, the Muslim minority community, which primarily lives in the eastern uh, he tries to behave like a viceroy, because what we have experienced is my own personal experience that on more than one occasion, India actually forced Sri Lankan government, India forced the Sri Lankan president to step back from what he had already said on the peaceful resolution of the Kashmir dispute and on region for peaceful resolution of the disputes and for economic progress and prosperity. In brief, as far as the Sri Lankan people are concerned, and quite a large majority of their politicians, scholars, intellectuals, academics, Pakistan enjoys a very good respect. They really respect Pakistan from the core of their heart. Apparently, I mean, they have their own limitations, and I think we need to understand their limitations, and we need to respect their limitations while dealing with them, because I would say that India's knee is on Sri Lankan neck. That is actually the reality. Uh, Before, I mean, we at times, get a little perturbed on the response of the Sri Lankan government on certain issues. We must keep in our mind that at all costs we must continue extending all required support, be it diplomatic, be it financial, be it in the domain of the security and the defense of Sri Lanka. We must continue that, which helps to protect and preserve the sovereignty and independence of Sri Lanka. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Hashmat, for very incisive analysis. Now I invite Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal to apprise on false flag operations, India's new normal. Dr. Jaspal is professor at School of Politics and International Relations, Quaid-e-Azam University. His expertise includes Pakistan's national security, proliferation of nuclear weapons and missile systems, with more than 120 academic research papers, monographs, and book chapters. He recently authored India's Surgical Strike Stratagem, Brinkmanship and Responses. Dr. Jaspal.
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab. How much time I can use for presentation? Please first clarify.
Sir,
5 minutes, 10 minutes. The seasoned honorable diplomats, journal, and my colleague Khaja Asma, as well as my senior, Musa Ahmed. And at the same time, I'm very much grateful to the Institute of Strategic Study for providing me this opportunity. 2 points which quickly I flag. One is, of course, false flag operation. It's clearer that what by a false flag operation is generally we commit something and try to, with the intention to cover the actual source of responsibility and pinning blame on the second party. Is this false flag operation is a part of new normal strategy, or is the new normal in the case of Modi government in India? If you can see in the last 6 years, you can say there are enough evidences which confirms it. Though we find it that when we look about this new normal, it has been used at various occasions with various, you can say, explanations, but philosophy of this new normal was very much clearer. We can even trace back India's hegemonic or preeminence or designs or attempts to establish its, you can say, supremacy in the region during the Nehru time, when Prime Minister Nehru, everyone called his entire foreign policy was under the influence of idealist school of thought. But we trace in the recent history Indira doctrine, and now region dominated by it. And at the same time, with this new normal, India started looking Indian Ocean as India's ocean. Now, in this case, why India became more aggressive in the pursuit of establishing new normal through military muscle, that was also their international, India's Indo-Pacific strategy and Americans' encouragement. India has been viewed by the American-led world as a counterforce of China in Asia Pacific. I'm not going to in those details, they were already covered, So India, from the very beginning, has been trying to pursue this kind of the dominance and establish its, you can say, hegemony in the region, and sometimes saying Indira Doctrine, sometimes Gujarat Doctrine, sometimes New Norm. And on the other side, earlier, when these attempts were made, it was not enjoying international sport. But today, international sport is there. Outcome, if we send focus, what are the, you can say, way how India is pursuing it? I can just flag for 5 points which make clearer that why this new normal in the context of India's strategic and foreign policy is dangerous. In order to establish new normal, as I already said, that it is very much militaristic. In the militaristic terminology, if you see, earlier it used to say punitive action, then it started saying you can hot pursuit, then it starts saying surgical strike. And we have seen that in 2016, it said it conducted surgical strike on the basis of false you can say operation or diverting the attention. Then in the India's, you can say, joint forces doctrine, surgical strike make the part of the doctrine. Again, it was reflected in the case of India's land warfare doctrine, released in December 2018. And then we have seen that they talked about new normal, but this new normal gained a different dimension, strategically speaking, after Pulwama or 27th, where India lost its conventional superiority, you can say confidence on 27th February 2009, it jumped over nuclear. It started, and I decode that strategy as a nuclear compellence strategy. So today, India's nuclear compellence that is important to note. And theoretically and practically, literature is unable to support, because all the authors believe a nuclear compellence strategy against a nuclear armed state is a disaster. It is not successful. So with this, when we look about, in order to comply with it, what India is trying, India tried to achieve the new normal through escalation dominance, failed. India has been trying to achieve through nuclear compellence strategy. India has been becoming more visible as irresponsible nuclear weapon state when Modi made these statements, nuclear bluff, these are not for Diwali. But what is the outcome? That's important. With India's new normal, Pakistan has been compelled to further, you can say, enhance its credibility of deterrence, and that's why Pakistan came up what we call it quid pro quo plus. Generally, in a deterrence strategy, we limit ourselves with the quid pro quo, but when you say plus, it's unimaginable, undefined. So in this context, if India is going for a compellence strategy and our plus side is not defined, that means Pakistan has a strategy, but the theater could believe. And that leads me to 3 crises, which are 3 factors very much destabilizing, if I can put the entire my discussion in one sentence. India's new normal, at the same time, to justify against Pakistan through this false flag operation kind of a tactic, is very much going to escalate the crisis, which we say crisis instability. And in the case of crisis instability, there's a strategic instability. We have seen on 26 what Indians were expecting, or what we were expecting, and what the Americans were confirming. Which was unintentionally escalated to he lost 2 aircraft. And then a conventionally superior so-called state has started jump on the nuclear strategy, and then it deceive the public. And here comes what India's main strategy today is. India is not going for a hot pursuit or a surgical strike. My understanding is for the time being, India with this rhetoric is going to engage and convert domestic pressure away and try to engage Pakistan in a nuclear arms race. So in my summary or in my last sentence is the outcome of these India's false flag. What is the outcome? We are at a high alert, costly for Pakistan. To maintain quid pro quo, arms race, costly for Pakistan. And at the same time, compelling strategy, instability for India itself. So this is the situation when you look about these two things together in my understanding. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dr. Jaspal, for scholastic insight. For the keynote address, now I request Ambassador Aizaz Ahmed Chaudhry, Director General, Institute of Strategic Studies, Islamabad.
Thank you, Saif. What a delight it was to listen to very candid views from most of the panelists who are all much wiser than I am. I'll just make 3 points. One is that Modi has brought a paradigm shift to India internally and externally. Now, what is that paradigm shift? Internally, he has introduced RSS agenda but he has brought it to the fore and declared his intentions to create a Hindu Rashtra, which is essentially a xenophobic concept because it works or has no space for minorities, especially Muslims. He has gone a step further to even try to change the history, deface India's own history. The second element within this paradigm shift, internal paradigm shift, was on the economic front. The corporate India was very excited when Modi came to power, but that excitement has now deflated. And we can see demonetization, GST and others, as well as what it is doing in Kashmir, the repressions, and various sources of conflicts within the country have all impeded its power to assert as a Hindu Rashtra. So that paradigm shift is internally in trouble. The external dimension of it is that it has bruised and harmed India's image. India is no longer being viewed as a pluralistic state, as a democratic state, a tolerant state, and the criticism is growing all across, including from within India. Yes, US-India partnership had given a fillip to the standing of India, but it comes with a baggage and with a cost, which is manifesting itself in India's quarrelsome relationships in South Asia, as well as its northern neighbor, China. It is also it is trying desperately to replay the terrorism bogey, to shift the blame to Pakistan, but I don't think it is working as it did in the past. So my point number one is that the paradigm shift that Modi had brought to India internally and externally has proved to be a disaster for India. And India is emerging as a racist, as an intolerant country. The second point that I want to make is that India's relations with all its neighbors are troublesome. Now, this also stems from the same paradigm shift that Modi tried to bring. Of course, part of the reason was also the global geopolitics, where the US tilt towards India encouraged Modi regime to be more hegemonic in South Asia, as if it is the policeman of South Asia, the policeman of Indian Ocean. When we see its relations with all the neighbors, and we have had this opportunity to listening to all our friends and illustrious colleagues, we have seen that how conflictual streaks. With Pakistan, I don't need to elaborate what it is doing. The only country which has truly resisted Indian hegemony in South Asia. China, as Ambassador Salman adequately explained, India has just gotten exposed. I think it is important for people to know that India was pursuing disrupt Pakistan's relations with China, to disrupt China's own engagements in Xinjiang and Tibet, and therefore it was a serious provocation. And as Ambassador Salman has rightly described the provocations, they are turning has been suffering high-handedness of India. Sri Lanka, as Ambassador Ashmat just said, India tends to treat it as its colony, and same goes for Maldives. With Bangladesh, of course, it's a slightly different story, because Hasina has taken the view that leaves her no choices. But the broader segment within Bangladesh is resenting and is quite suspectful of Modi. I would say even with Myanmar and SAARC as a whole. So the second point is that relations, the first was that paradigm shift has gone disastrous for India. Second was that it has also impacted India's relations with all three neighbors. And my third point is that is India a victim or an aggressor? And I think for the first time, India is getting exposed as an aggressor. And that is why we are talking about this subject today, because all along India had been trying to project itself as a victim of Chinese aggressions and Pakistan-sponsored terrorism. This has now become evident that it was the other way around. So my sense is that while it is dangerous for peace and stability of South Asia, it is also an opportunity to expose India for what its true colors are. Since we have taken a long time and listening to many speakers on, and honestly, I listened very carefully. Saf, I would take a few minutes to reflect on some of the points that I believe should go into our report, which are something very important. Ambassador Riaz Khokhar has correctly identified the strategic objectives of India, because we need to understand that very clearly, that India wants hegemony in South Asia, it will dominate the Indian Ocean, and it wants to use the SAARC countries to extend its own. And there is something which I caught my attention, that India's provocation because of what India does vis-a-vis supply chain, hostility to CPAC, GB, etc., and military because of what it has done in terms of constructions in the line of actual control area. And Dr. Munis Ahmed has a long experience in Bangladesh, and I must say I fully share his conclusion that at the elite level, probably Hasina has been able to persuade all like-minded people of Bangladesh to toe the Indian line. But at the popular level, there is a strong sentiment which resents India, tutelage to India, to subservience to India, and it has come out more openly through Citizenship Amendment Act and the NRC. Ambassador Zamir Akram, when he was ambassador to Nepal, I had joined South Asia, and I remember at that time he had sent a report. I don't know, Zamir, if Nepal and Pakistan is India, through the Xinjiang, through the northern areas towards Pakistan. And at that time, frankly, it seemed far-fetched. But with the all of developments that have already now taken place in the Karakoram region and are still taking place in Xinjiang and CPAC, I think that aspect is now appearing to be a reality. And I was quite amused because I had not heard it. What Foreign Minister Bhutto had said, that Nepal is for India, what Afghanistan is for Pakistan. I think we need to delve deeper into reflecting what actually it means. I agree with his comment that Pakistan could work with China for access to Nepal through Xinjiang. And Dr. Asma Khaja made an does not want regionalism. This is interesting because India was always trying to project SAARC as its baby. And if you remember, when Modi came to power in 2014, he invited SAARC heads of state to give the impression that India would give importance to SAARC. But the reality is actually it's the other way around. India does not want SAARC to prosper because it wants to remain the only hegemonic power, rather than enabling the smaller SAARC states to demand equal right. I mean, this is our sovereign equality. This is a very interesting point that she has articulated very well. Master Shahid Hashmat, I can call him general, I can call him doctor, and I can call him high commissioner, a versatile personality. He also probably made the same point about SAARC, but I liked his term that he used from George Floyd's issue in the United States, that India is trying to keep its knee on Sri Lanka's neck, and dare I say, on Maldives' neck too. So I think India would discover as that policeman who should run. Dr. Zafar Nawaz Jaspal has been a sort of pattern to us now because he participated and advises us so much. India, but it has far-reaching strategic implications because it is taking the what appears to be a conventional conflict into a nuclear domain, and that is very, very dangerous business. So I would say that I have learned a lot from this session, and we would like to make a nice, crisp report of all the points. And I think it is worth printing, worth sharing with all stakeholders in Pakistan's governance, in Pakistan's academia. To you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for very comprehensive. By research fellow from India Study Center by Mr. Asad to Ambassador Salman Bashir. To what extent the Sino-Indian conflict in Ladakh can be extended both in military and political terms. Also, what will be the impact of this conflict on the strategic culture of South Asia? Ambassador Salman Bashir to respond, please.
Thank you very much. I think the standoff, so to say, in Ladakh is important. I think as far as the ground situation is concerned, the Indians are in difficulty, and both politically at home and militarily in that area. They realize that there are limits to what they can do. Confined to this one meeting between the two militaries. Clear that they will not continue to tolerate the sort of mischief that the Indians are trying to create in China's backyard and playing a proxy in the greater global struggle. I think the key message for us, as I said, was that in terms of the Jammu and Kashmir issue and all matters relating to Pakistan, China cooperation, whether these are political or economic, we need to be very clear. We need to be very clear. We need to clearly state our point of view. I think the Foreign Office statement on this issue was well crafted, and I think the Indians are getting a message. It could create problems for us after the debacle they have faced with the Chinese. So therefore, this calls for much closer coordination between Pakistan and China. And on the whole, I think for the moment, the escalation has been sort of confined. There will be, as I said, continued references to the Wuhan consensus, but this consensus will probably be redefined as it goes forward, as we go forward. And the geopolitical messaging, of course, is very clear. There are limits to which China will tolerate the Indian proclivity to sort of set out by the Chinese in this regard. Thank you.
Saif, let me just come in for a minute.
Sure, sir, sure, please.
Salman Sahab, the question posed to you by Asadullah has prepared a very nice analysis with the help of graphs and maps on what is happening in this standoff. And I just cleared it last night. This issue brief will be published and placed on our website. You would see that's quite a thorough professional work and brings out very clearly from which side the provocations are actually coming. Yes, sir.
Great.
Okay. Let me ask a question from Ambassador Riaz Khokar. Sir, as the Indo-US strategic partnership is already established, India is also not realizing how to come to dialogues as a key to resolve resolution to various issues. So my question is, how to halt Indian aggressive postures in quest for peace in South Asia?
I think, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, sir, we can hear you.
Yeah. I think one of the factors that may have been that States in its pocket. Therefore, it's in a position to take on the Chinese. But I have a feeling the Americans were very cautious. There were one or two encouraging statements from here or there, but when Trump said he is willing to offer mediation between China and India, I thought it was a ridiculous. In this regard, China is an adversary, as an enemy, and has no, certainly in the current situation, has no standing with the Chinese. The point I want to make here is, I think Salman has been talking about it. I think we have to take a more clearer position on the Chinese Indian scrap. We should not hedge. And we should endorse that. We don't have to stand on hedge our views. It should be clear. I think the Chinese will appreciate that. Although they don't need us, but I think diplomatically we should be very clear that China has very legitimate claims, whereas India has no legitimate claims. And let's say in Kashmir, zero. It's occupied, annexed, everything illegally in contravention of UN resolutions, bilateral agreements, everything. So we should be very clear. India will remain a threat to Pakistan. India has certainly been able to dominate Nepal and Bhutan. Let me tell you, little Bhutan, they are fed up with the Indians. They want to settle their problems with the Chinese, but the Indians are not allowing that. So my point that I want to make is India will remain a threat for Pakistan, but we should be able to handle it. We don't have to cow down. We don't have to beg for dialogue. We don't have to behave as if we are very, very worried and we are scared of what India can do. We should be clear. India must know that if it creates mischief for Pakistan, we are in a position to handle India very, very appropriately. This is the point I want to make.
Thank you, Ambassador, for the response. At the end, I request Ambassador Khalid Mahmood for the concluding remarks. Ambassador Khalid Mahmood is a former ambassador of Pakistan of Islamic Conference and the Economic Cooperation Organization. Currently, Ambassador Mahmood Islamabad. He holds a Master's in Political Science and LLB from the University of Punjab. Sir, floor is with you.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. What a pleasure to meet old colleagues and friends, courtesy Zoom. Yesterday, I came across a report on India's relations with its neighbors. Just I read one excerpt from it. It states, in South Asia is to preserve and strengthen its dominance of a region. Although it probably claims to respect sovereignty and independence of its smaller and far weaker neighbors, India has often pursued its policy of hegemony at the expense of good relations with them. And this is an excerpt from a report of CIA, dated 19th January 2011. After hearing all the learned speakers here, one comes to the conclusion that nothing has changed since 2011. If anything, the situation has got worsened. Indian aggressive posture towards its neighbors. They have already been identified in the course of the debate today. One was, of course, Indian hubris stemming from its bigger size, economic development, but that, as we learned, that progression has been slowed down of late. Second factor was this advent of Modi to the premiership of India. Modi, who is an avid advocate of RSS ideology, aiming at establishment of Hindutva. In India. Third factor has been this India's partnership with the United States against or for containment of China. As India made more aggressive of late, is the domestic internal problems India is facing by these the legislation, no citizenship act, etc. And of course, Kashmir issue has also been the Achilles heels of India, and India has illegally, forcibly, of course, tried to alter the situation, but it has no legal sanction behind it. And what's more, have such a change. And of course, India has also tried to exploit the situation, how to contain, check the spread of that virus. India tried to flex its muscles. And as usual, the other big powers, Western powers, in pursuit of their own selfish vested interests, they are also not speaking up or putting any pressure on India. This has all affected, impact on any regional cooperation under SAARC, or even has the possibility of impacting the nuclear deterrence also in this region. A number of recommendations have been made by the speakers here, particularly Ambassador Riyad Khokhar and Salman Bashir, which are very timely, and I think they need to be developed. My last point is that I think India is being small-minded. India is a big country, of course, big resources, big population, big power, military strength, all these things. And it is natural for India to be an influential country. And it aspires to join the big table, in the Security Council as permanent member. With it, and here it fails. Instead of getting the support of the regional countries, it has excited their suspicion, enmity, and so I think it is India's own interest that it should mend its ways and policies to instill confidence among its neighbors, and then naturally it will enjoy the power which it is. I think India should think of acting as elder brother and not as big brother. Thank you.
Thank you, sir, for your for summing up and comprehensive views. Ladies and gentlemen, I especially extend my gratitude to our panelists for having spared their precious time for today's webinar. For video recording, press release, and other reports, you may like to visit ISSI's website that is available through Google. With this, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your participation, and today's event stands closed. Thank you all.